Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Jairangam 2021 Masterclass from Play to Production. In this masterclass, Gowri Ramnarayan shares her experience in writing, directing, designing, and producing stage plays and suggests ways of adapting and transforming theatre practices given the constraints of a global pandemic. Ma'am will be answering all the questions in the end. You can type them in the comment box. Now, I welcome Gauri ji. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. It is, I really want to thank Jairangam and all the people who have been working for Jairangam for inviting me to participate in this festival, this annual festival, Jairangam Online Festival 2021. You know, I truly miss Sri Deepak Gera because he was the one who created this entire festival, I think, in Jaipur, of all places. It was something miraculous. And like all of you, I've still not completely recovered from the shock of his sudden and unexpected demise. His love of the theatre, his passion for theatre, and the way he encouraged Rangakarmis, it was something that I admired and appreciated so much. He became a personal friend. He encouraged me, gave me opportunities to perform in Jairangam. And I think it is absolutely wonderful that Srimati Hema Gera and the rest of the people in Jairangam have decided to celebrate his life, Deepak ji's life, by continuing with this festival, which is really perpetuating his vision. And I am glad to have a small part in it. Thank you. I want to begin today's talk with some very inspiring lines from one of the most famous plays in the world. All of you will surely know it. It's Julius Caesar by Shakespeare. And these were the lines I heard when I was 13 years old. My teacher read them aloud to me. He read them very well, and he read them aloud to me. Just going to go through a few lines with you now. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is interred with their bones. So let it be with Caesar. The noble Brutus hath told you Caesar was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. And here, under the leave of Brutus and the others, I come to speak. For come I to speak in Caesar's funeral. He was my friend, faithful and just to me. But Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. He had brought home many captives, whose ransoms did the general coffers fill. Did this in Caesar seem ambitious? When the poor have cried, Caesar hath wept. Ambition should be made of sterner stuff. Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man. Now, as you all know, this is a speech given by Mark Antony, a funeral oration about standing near the body of Caesar, who has been murdered, stabbed to death by so many noble citizens of Rome, who were afraid that he wanted to turn himself into an emperor, a dictator, and destroy the democracy that was Rome. So, and when my teacher read these lines aloud to me, I was so moved. I was just 13 years old. I don't know if I understood the lines. What I understood was the emotion and the images in those lines. And as I was weeping, my teacher looked at me and laughed and said, I'm happy to see, Gowri, that you are responding to this just as the Roman mob on the streets responded to it 2,000 years ago. Nothing has changed since then. Today, I am delighted to share my experiences with you as an all-round Rangakarmi. Yes, I've worked all round, yes, in writing, directing, producing plays, finding sponsorship, publicity, designing posters, devising costumes, collecting props, not to forget the most important part, which is making chai and sometimes special snacks for my actors. You will ask me, when did you become a Rangakarmi? I'd been a journalist for many years when one day in 2004, the actor Dhritiman Chatterjee came to my house and found me writing an imaginary dialogue between the poet Arun Kolatkar, the Marathi poet Arun Kolatkar, and myself. Kolatkar had died the day before, and I was writing about him in order to overcome my own sense of loss. For the death of a great poet is a great loss to the world, whether the world knows it or not. When are we going to have rehearsals? Dhritiman asked, casting himself in the role of the eccentric poet. And that is how I found myself, a long-term journalist with the Hindu, turned into a playwright and a director in one stroke. And when we premiered that play, which we called Dark Horse in Calcutta, we needed a name for the company, and Dhritiman suggested Just Us Repertory. And here we are today, over 30 productions. Friends, today as I draw my thoughts from this journey, I'm going to keep it simple because I think if you keep it simple, the issues become clearer. Let's first look at the play itself. My first point is about playwriting, or devising a performance script using available material to create a theatre production. First, it is about choosing the play. Whether you write your own play, or which is what I do most of the time, or pick up an already written text, the criteria will be the same. It must be performable for you, performable with the resources that you have, your financial resources, your administrative resources, and the kind of actors whom you have. Now, let's take resources first. In 1985, Peter Brooks premiered his monumental saga, the Mahabharata, at the Avignon Theatre in France. Now, this was after 10 years of working on that project with an entire team of collaborators, and then calling actors from all over the world who came and stayed in a single place for a long time to rehearse the play. Then the British director Tim Supple, he came to India in 2009 and rehearsed Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream in Pondicherry. Now, he devised a multilingual script with actors from all parts of India, and they spoke the lines of Shakespeare translated into their own mother tongues. And the play also had built into it a great deal of athletics and gymnastics. So this became an extravaganza. In India too, those who have very large repertories have been able to produce such spectacular theatre, like Ratantiyam in Manipur, and also Habib Tanveer and B.V. Karant and others in certain contexts and at certain stages in their lives. Institutions like the National School of Drama can, of course, produce spectacular theatre. Now, for most of us, such things are a pipe dream. However, there is a lot we can do with what we have instead of only dreaming about what we don't have. So let's look at framing your theme, creating an ambience and a perspective for it. Once, I wanted to write a play about human intelligence. Human intelligence which is used more often to destroy the world than to make the world a better place to live in. And so I made up a story about a character called Nikor, a child prodigy in mathematics. In ancient Babylon, 500 BCE, that's 2,500 years ago, he was castrated in childhood and sold into slavery and became the most powerful man in the splendidly rich ancient kingdom of Babylon. And what did he do with his phenomenal intelligence once he was at the height of his power? He simply used it to cause more havoc, more destruction, in order to gain more wealth and more power. Now, a play like this would need splendid sets to create the ancient world, right? And a huge cast of characters, from kings and queens to generals and warriors and servants and attendants. But I was not shooting Troy with Brad Pitt. I wasn't shooting Bahubali. So I wrote a monodrama for Bala, D. Balakrishnan, a single actor, to play Nikor, the eunuch. I put two musicians and my stage manager on the stage and they provided a live back score and also spoke the lines in between as other characters, sometimes as the conscience of Nikor himself. So to create the whole civilization of Babylon on the stage, all we needed were two huge paintings painted by one of my actors, Arabi Raghavan. She painted the gods of Babylon, the terrifying gods of Babylon, Marduk, the warrior god, and Ishtar, the goddess of love. We hung it up at the back. So this was more than enough to take the audience into that world. I think what you must have also discovered it by now, that what we consider to be compromises sometimes turn out to be very powerful, because lack of funds basically, lack of resources, it can make us much more innovative, as we all know. Now, you will say, you can plan all this because you write your own plays. What about when we take a play which is already written by somebody else? Well, I have seen the whole of Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice produced with a single actor who, Shylock, who created that entire play as a monodrama. So anything is possible. I'm not saying that everything should become a monodrama, but it is possible to pare things down and create what you want without the ideal spectacular sets and cast of characters that you require. The trick is to choose something that adapts itself to this kind of production. Now, then we come to interpretation. Now, there is always in your life, there will be a classic play that you will want to produce. A classic play which has been produced through the ages any number of times, interpreted in hazard different ways, and by the most famous directors. Now, I saw a splendid example of how you can come up with something equally good in your own way, which was very original. Some of you might have even seen it. It was called Hamlet, the Clown Prince by Company Theatre, where imagine Hamlet, the great tragedy, as a comedy in the first place and performed by clowns. So that itself was an innovation. But through that situations which seemed ridiculous and absurd and funny and comical, they were also able to create that the darkness of tragedy, that piercing quality of tragedy. I think that was a great success. It was human imagination at its best. So I had a problem like that once when I wanted to produce a play that I love. It is Mohan Rakesh's Ashad Ka Ek Din, One Day in Ashada. Now, so many famous directors have produced it, not to mention Alkazi's brilliant production in the National School of Drama. So what could I do that they hadn't done before? Now, as you all know, Ashad Ka Ek Din is about Kalidasa, and Mohan Rakesh modernizes this play by showing how creativity in somebody gets completely dried up and destroyed when they allow themselves to be commercialized, when they allow themselves to become pawns in a political game. And how could I show this? And then I got this idea, which we executed. I took 3 scenes from Kalidasa's play, the original Sanskrit plays, 3 short scenes, and we placed them before each act of Mohan Rakesh's plays. It has 3 acts. So one Kalidasa scene followed by one Rakesh scene and so on. So now what happened in the end by using this device was that Kalidasa's classic scenes from a very idealized romantic past highlighted the harsh reality, the darkness of the present in Mohan Rakesh's play. How do you devise a performance script? The most striking example that I saw was in Kalakshetra, Manipur, Kanhayalal's theatre laboratory, where there was a small play many actors sat in a semicircle on the stage and they started singing the famous bhajan that all of us know, Gandhiji's favorite, Vaishnava Janito Tene Kahiye, Ye Peer Parai Jane Re. So now what they did was to stop after every two lines, and some of the actors would get up and perform in mime one scene of police brutality in Manipur. And then they would continue the next two lines, and then another scene, and so on. Finally, when the whole song was finished, what happened was something that was kind of heart-stopping. The song about compassion made such a contrast with the violent happenings that they showed in a very stylized way because it was in mime. This became so tangible you could cut it with a knife. The most interesting script that I have devised was called Sakshi. My actor, Gowri Ramnarayan, she needed a play quite urgently to perform at an award ceremony. I was traveling in the US at that time. So I took three characters from three of my own plays and adapted it into a new play. One woman character from mythology, another character from the historical past, and a third woman from tribal India. So the tribal community, Rajasthan. So, and what about costume changes? The play should not flag or sag because of the actor's costume changes. So I built them in minimal changes, which I built them into the script itself, and the actor made those changes on the stage, and in order to keep audience interest going, and also to create a shift of the era, the period, and the qualities of that play, we had a song which she sang as she made those changes. So it's very simple ways you can overcome problems, Now let us say, I give you another example, which was a dance theatre production called Aham Sita. Now in this, there were 5 stages of Sita's life, which were danced by a dancer, and I played the other women characters in the Ramayana, Mandodari, Urmila, Manthara, and so on, Shurpanakha, and so on. So now, that was a completely different production. But what happened was that the other women who had been voiceless before and very little written about in the Ramayana became so interesting to me that I wrote a play about those women, and it was called What She Said, and we performed it on the stage. Now, when we performed it on the stage, it was a spectacular production with wonderful lighting and costume changes and, martial arts movements and so on. But when Jairangam asked us to do that last year as an online festival, I realized that was not going to work at all. So this time we just depended on the dialogues, put the camera in front of the actor and made them speak the lines and emote those lines. So what we got was something very different. So the same idea you can rework in many different ways depending on the different context and the different needs, I think. And there's another problem that all of us face now, because theater is a live medium. We cannot even imagine theater as something that is projected on the screen. That's cinema, right? But because of the needs of the present day, we are all forced to shoot our plays and project them on social media. Now, how do we do that? We have to develop new skills to do that, which is what I've been trying to do. I'm not there yet, but I'm trying to do that. And I think all of you are trying. And I've seen some tremendous successes and some tremendous flops, which is natural. You have to make your mistakes before you can achieve success, right? Now, let us say that you're adapting a short story, or from a novel, or from even newspaper reports that you put together, but you're unable to connect the scenes together. Now, what do you do? They're not smooth and they stand out separately. What do you do? There's a brilliant and perfect solution in the Indian tradition. Use a sutradhar. And you can craft that sutradhar in any way, shape that sutradhar any way you want. It can be a puppet, it can be a masked figure, it can be a clown, it can be a comedian, stand-up comedian, a teller of stories. It can even be a television newscaster. The sky is the limit. So part of the adventures of today is to find solutions to the problems that the new age has brought us. Now, you can't have theater without actors and audiences, right? So, to me, the theater has always been an actor's medium. You can choose the best play in the world, you can direct it till you drop dead, but you really need your actors. Once the curtain goes up, it is the actors who make the play. And as long as you have good actors and you have adequate rehearsal time to think about what you're doing, because, sometimes we do things in such a rush, we don't have time to think. So if you can think about what you're doing and you have enough rehearsal time, you can make magic on the theater, on the video screen, as well as on the real stage. The most important lesson that I have learned in theater is that audiences are always unpredictable. The same play can come off very differently in different venues before different audiences. And it can be a hit in one place, it can be a flop in another. And some people get the nuances, the audience members, all the nuances that you put into the play. And some people come up with ideas which you haven't had at all. But and some people will just remain deadwood. You can never explain this. I think we have to be just prepared for the contingency. On the whole, I know that Indian audiences anywhere in India are very receptive to experiments, to using progressive themes when you think differently and present something differently, and radical interpretations. But I have found Indian audiences in the US, I'm only talking about Indian audiences, much more conventional, not always open to what we say is off mainstream, not open to subversive ideas or what they call counterculture, particularly plays which question the establishment, particularly plays which question what we call Indian culture or Indian tradition or Indian values. Now, I find children the best audiences in any part of the world because they notice things which adults often miss. Tomorrow at 7 p.m., you will be able to see my play, When Things Fall Apart. It is a serious play about Drona, a character in the Mahabharata, and it is against the backdrop of war and violence. It deals with the destruction of lives, of culture, values, families, populations. But every time we performed it in a school, we found that the children were completely engrossed in what was happening. They did not let their attention flag even for an instant. They laughed when they identified themselves with the rebellious son and the impatient parent, and the scenes of aggression and tension and violence. They were really, totally absorbed in watching them. After the play, I share something really funny that happened. The lead actor in one of the productions found that the bow broke when he was talking Drona. Drona was talking, the bow broke. And he just, being a seasoned actor, he just flung it aside and then continued as it was before. After the play was over, some of the children came and said, we were completely overpowered by the fact that Drona was so angry that he broke his bow when he was talking. Even the breaking of the bow told us how angry he was. So that's how children respond to every action, and every little detail. Let's think about the methods and strategies for directing and producing theatre work. Firstly, I would say that I have found it important to make use of the resources that are available in your town, in your city, wherever you are. I work from Chennai. And this is the home of Carnatic music, Southern classical music called Carnatic music. It is the home of Bharatanatyam. So I often cast dancers as my actors. Some of those dancers you may know: Priyadarshini Govind, Maithili Prakash, Shijit Krishna, Anjana Anand. Now, Uma Satyanarayanan, who plays the role, a major role in the play, my play tomorrow, she is a dancer, professional dancer. So, as these dancers learn a new skill, I have the advantage of being able to use their confidence on the stage and their dance movements sometimes. And certainly, the fact that they are trained in martial arts and yoga, that is an additional advantage. So I find that this kind of interdisciplinary work is, it's not really interdisciplinary, is it? Is making use of somebody who belongs to one discipline in another context. So when this happens, I think such collaborations can be very inventive and very layered and very challenging and exciting too, and they bring new insights. Because as you know, dancers deal with emotions in a completely different way. In theater, we have to deal with those emotions in a completely different way. And when they come with their arsenal of techniques, they add to the techniques that are used in theater. Now, music. Music is very important in theater, as we all know. There are so many theater directors have used music in the most innovative ways. I'm also a musician, so I write a parallel script of music as I'm writing my play. Now, Savita Narasimhan, a young musician, was a founding member of our theater company, Justice Repertory. So, music has been vital to all my productions. Live music on the stage, not recorded music, live music with the musicians seated on the stage. Classical musicians from, you may know some of them, T.M. Krishna and Bombay Jayashree, as well as many other younger musicians. And they have worked in theater with me. I'd love to mention here that a pianist called Anil Srinivasan, who played Western classical music along with as a parallel stream in my one of my plays called Water Lilies, he knew the text by heart. You know, these people come with a different commitment, professional commitment. He knew the text by heart, the play by heart, and he was prompting the actors when they missed their lines. So all these musicians have made a tremendous contribution to the productions that Justice has put out. And you will see tomorrow what young Shreya Devnath, a violinist, and Praveen Sparsh, who's a Mridangam player, have brought to this. They have created an entire orchestra. In fact, Shreya actually found a little bird which she could use in order to put water into that little instrument and created bird song with bird calls with that. So they're very inventive too. And for them, working for a classical musician to work in theater is to open up different avenues. So it's exciting for them as well as for us. But I don't use music only as a backscore in the play to highlight any emotion which is already depicted in the dialogues of the actor, the expressions of the actor, the movements of the actor. I like music to create its own parallel script, parallel meaning, a different set of meanings, another layer, let us say. It gives, now, music also gives me a solution to a major problem that I face as a director. And what is that problem? I'm sure you have the same problem too. We know that theater is not only about what we see and what we hear, what is just spoken or what is enacted. Even in Shakespeare's plays, where the dialogues just simply gush forth like the Niagara Falls. Even there, it is what goes on between the words, under the words and above the words, the dialogues. That is the real play, right? Now, how do we create those echoes, those resonances, those unheard, those unseen things for the spectator to perceive? How do we do it? One way is, of course, to make use of music. Let me give an example. which is from my play called Dark Horse, the first play that I talked about, my first play. It opens with the woman character, a journalist, who reads the news report of the poet Arun Kolatkar's death. And then she goes and picks up a book of Kolatkar's poems and starts looking at them. This is the physical movements on the stage. Now, I wanted to convey her sense of loss, a sense of feeling that something is missing from the world because of this person's passing away. He was not a personal friend. It was a feeling that she had about the loss to the world. And how could I do that? So I asked my musician to sing a phrase of Allah. She's a classical musician. And as this movement was going on, and I think the audience felt what I wanted them to feel. I hope so anyway. It was something like this. So something like that. So this immediately, and it was a very quiet melodic line, and the movements were also quiet. So, but there were two different meanings emerging from that. And once again, I had this problem with the Mathematician. In the Mathematician, which I've already talked about, the powerful man, Nikor, he is actually clearing his workspace. He's putting his work tools away, and as he's clearing everything and bringing order out of disorder. But the emotion there is not of order and system and method. His whole world is collapsing around him. His life has collapsed because he has suddenly realized that all his life, he's wasted it. All his life, he's been pursuing evil goals, he's been doing evil things, and he's followed the wrong goals. So how do you convey that when what he is doing is without any expression on his face, just methodical movements of clearing the space, workspace. So I thought we could convey his sense of defeat and desolation, wastefulness, by using a song which conveyed a different meaning, a meaning which was very different from the actions that you saw. I'm finding it difficult to sing as, you talk and sing, but I just give you a glimpse of that also. Hai re wo din kyun na aaye, जाके ऋतु लौट आए, हाय रे वो दिन क्यों न आए. So even if you didn't know the meaning of the words, and as you probably know, this is a song from an old film called Rishikesh Mukherjee's film called Anuradha, and the music was composed by Pandit Ravi Shankar. Another thing that I find very, very useful for theatre person, actors as well as directors, are paintings. They're of immense value. Why? Because I'm not only talking about using them on the stage, using paintings on the stage, but whenever I go abroad, the first thing I do is to go to the museum and spend a lot of time looking at the paintings of the masters. You know why? Because the way they present their characters through the colors and lines, what they choose to frame, how they frame it, the angles in which they have placed their characters. Most importantly, the lighting that they use, the kind of lighting techniques that they use, and how they center stage, what do they center stage, and what is upstage, what is, downstage. These things you can get fabulous lessons from painting for theater, because, these are frozen scenes of theater, these paintings. And I find them extremely inspiring, and they give me ideas, production ideas how to produce a play, not just to look at them and admire them, which also, of course, we all do. Now, about using paintings on the stage, I already told you about the gods of Babylon that we used in the play Mathematician. But I produced a dance theatre work called Yashodhara, based on Maithili Sharan Gupta's poem, Yashodhara. And of course, Yashodhara is the wife of Gautama Buddha, whom he abandoned and went away in search of enlightenment. So this is the story of Yashodhara, the abandoned wife and the single mother. Now, by making her a painter, what I did was I had her paint right in the beginning of the production of the play. She paints a picture or a portrait of Prince Siddhartha, dressed in splendor, her husband, and she hangs it up on the stage. And what happens is Siddhartha becomes a character in the play. And then in the last scene, she paints Gautama Buddha, now a renunciate, a sannyasi, in his saffron robes and holding a begging bowl. And framed between these two paintings, this living presence of Yashodhara becomes a very powerful and striking statement of the fact that she's entrapped. And I think a lot of things you can convey without words when you think of using paintings, the techniques when you adopt the techniques of paintings, and also when you use them on the stage. In Water Lilies, another production of mine, where Anil Srinivasan, the pianist, was prompting the actors, in that play has 3 parts, and it's in different locations in the US. The first is in a park in Columbus City in Ohio. The second is in a museum in Texas. And the third is in the airport in Washington, Dulles, just immediately after 9/11. So as the play progressed, what we did was projected continuously a series of paintings on the back. Now, this posed some technical challenges also, but what this did was it created a parallel story which was told by the paintings. Of course, they were not randomly chosen; they had a reason for being there. And so you had one story on the stage enacted by the actors, and another story told by the paintings which were being projected at the back. So these are the ways in which I think we can, even with not much of resources, we can enhance the density, the layers of our productions. You can come up with 100 others, ideas. These are the ideas that I came up with when I had certain problems. And my most recent play is Enchantment. It remains unstaged due to COVID, due to the pandemic. The play is actually about Pandit Ravi Shankar, the sitar maestro. As you can imagine, this was not a man who lived in the dim past, like some mythic hero, of Mahabharata, Ramayana, or something like that. This is a man whom so many people who are living have known and seen, and we know his music, we know his image on the social media. So how do you create? How do you convince the audience that the person on the stage is this person whom they know so well, especially when the actor looks nothing like him? And my actor also raised another problem. He said, "I'm tone deaf. I can't sing a note. I know nothing about music. How can I play this role?" I said, "You're an actor, aren't you? Of course you should be able to play it." So we built that dialogue into the play right at the beginning between the actor and the playwright, discussing the problems of producing this play. And also the actor takes permission from the audience before he starts to do this audacious act, to dare to play such a musical icon whom everybody reveres and respects. So, and then he relives the life of the musician on the stage. Now, how do you create the other characters on the stage? You can't have just a story with Pandit Ravi Shankar, can you? So I had a problem because this was supposed to be traveling in the US, and we couldn't take a huge cast with us, many actors with us. So we solved it by making portraits, photographs which appeared like portraits, which we placed on scrolls, and the entry and exit of those characters was when that scroll was opened and when it was rolled back. And this was done by the playwright on the stage. And the actor speaks to them and they become part of the play. So now the basic question that we have in theatre, I think, is that why do we do theatre? Why do we do theatre? I think we do it because it's fun, it's a creative act, it is something that involves a group. People ask me, why did you become a playwright and a theatre director? Because I was a writer for most of my life. I was a journalist, and I've also written a few books. So how did you become a theatre director? The answer is simple, because when you're a writer or a painter for that matter, or even a musician, you're working all by yourself, alone, a classical Indian musician, I mean. So you're working by yourself, all alone. And while it is exciting, I thought that working with a community, with a group of people, with a team, it's something that generates so much energy, so much more than when you're working alone, I think, for me at least. So though as a playwright, I work alone, but when the play becomes theatre, I'm working with others. And I have to take into consideration what they want, what their capabilities are, what their potential is, and what their opinions. So it becomes a collaborative effort, which is, it's like living a community life, like in a joint family of the past. And I think that is the most exciting thing about theatre. When people work together, you come up with so many wonderful ideas. And but apart from that, I think we do theatre, honestly speaking, because we want to protest against injustice, against oppression, and against inhumanity in every form that we know. How to highlight those burning political questions, those social concerns, and all those troubling matters without reducing your work to slogans and manifestos and messages. How do you do it? It's a question that everybody faces. It is a difficult question. I think the only answers we can get are from the time-tested great plays that we have seen and we know about. I'm taking only the time-tested plays, though many modern plays are also have also fantastically fulfilled this demand. We go back to Julius Caesar. It is about tyranny and oppression, but Shakespeare doesn't give us a lecture about the totalitarian regime and the need to put the dictator down. What he does is to show us that even those who are working for the right goals can be tainted by wanting to do those things for all the wrong reasons. So he gives you a slice of humanity. He makes you see into human minds and the complicated, contradictory motivations of human beings, which is what theatre is about. Because, you can never really know another person by listening to that person or reading about that person. But when you see it in theatre, you can really experience the feelings of the other person. You can identify and put yourself in the shoes of that person. And Macbeth, it continues to show us that those who do evil will be consumed by evil. It's a moral story, right? It's like an allegory. And the Doll's House, let's take a more modern work, Ibsen's Doll's House. This play continues to have its relevance only because it is not just about women's problems or gender issues. It's really about the blindness, the self-deception, the self-centeredness that all of us have in ourselves. And the hypocrisy. Yeah. Death of a Salesman, another great play, Arthur Miller's play. This is not just about a man's inability, Willy Loman's inability to come to terms with his own mediocrity. It exposes the moral vacuum in a competitive culture. In this case, it is the American culture, but it is true across the world, right? So exposes the moral vacuum of any modern culture, which is so competitive, where the weak people have no place at all. They are ruthlessly weeded out. They're exterminated. They are kicked out. They have no chance of making it. Now, these plays do assert moral values. They have a message. They do have a slogan also. But it's just that they don't tell you those things openly, directly. They don't tell you what the values are directly. They let you, as a spectator, as an actor too, and as a director, let you discover it for yourself. And that is what makes them new each time you read them or see them or encounter them. Because they become part of you and they make you work with it. You're not a couch potato. You have to participate in that action which is taking place in order to recognize what the values that play is communicating to you. I think they do this by using that very time-tested technique of all art, which is ambiguity. Nothing is direct. Shakespeare has this line, through indirections, direction find. So they find their direction through indirections and these ambiguities. So I think our job as Rangakarmis is to retain those ambiguities in tone, color, line, feeling, form, structure, what have you, in all aspects. The play, once again, when things fall apart, it began very differently from what you will see tomorrow. I had always been fascinated by the character of Drona in the Mahabharata, such a great warrior and guru respected by everyone. And I empathized with his trauma, his anguish, when he was forced to take the side of Duryodhana, the evil side, against the righteous Pandavas, even though his heart was with them. Arjuna was his favorite disciple anyway. So I empathized with this. And I wanted to write a play about Drona. And then, 2 pages into the writing, I suddenly had all these questions. Wait a minute. Why did he make that decision? The excuse that he gives in the Mahabharata, it did not convince me, but only when I was writing it. And so I created another character, Kripi, Drona's wife, about whom there's hardly, 2 lines in the Mahabharata. We don't really know anything about her. So I was free to create my own Kripi. Now, Drona's wife, and I make her ask her husband uncomfortable questions to puncture his hypocrisy. And then I thought, what about his son, Ashwathama? Why did he become the ally of the Kauravas and commit the most brutal crime in the war? Was it because he felt neglected by his father, who adored his prized disciple, Arjuna? These questions turned when things fall apart into a different play. It was no longer about Drona, the tragic hero. It was about a dysfunctional nuclear family. And I leave it to the audience to find out whatever they want to find out from it. Okay, I'm going to end by mentioning some ground rules, which I repeat to myself all the time as a Rangakarmi. Read a lot, not only books, not only fiction and non-fiction, but all the newspapers, everything that you can find, because you must know what is happening in the world outside, and read the great books because you must know what is happening in the world of imagination within the minds of the great writers. Select, adapt a play in which you can put in your own point of view. Trust your actors, take them into your confidence, see them develop the play. And a play is not just words, though words are important. Try to see if you can substitute the words with some gesture, some action, or by some imaginative use of some prop. And all art is editing. It's very difficult to edit in theater because it involves a large number of people and each one has an ego. But trust me, editing in always improves your work. Be inspired by the other arts, painting, music, poetry. They add layers and nuances and textures. Be inspired by life. Be alive to the moment. Keep your windows open. Ideas come from different directions. You never know when inspiration will hit you. Be ready for it. The last one, if I don't relate my work on the stage to the world I live in, if I don't make my work relevant to the dilemmas that we face in the world, in the contemporary world, then my work will just remain a museum piece without any meaning. Whenever I talk about theater, I always end by asking, does modern theater bring insight? Does it bring understanding, compassion? Does it restore human values? Does it bring solace for pain? Does it oppose violence? Does it steel our resistance? Does theater make me take individual responsibility for all the things that are going around in the world? But today I will end with this burning question of our times. The pandemic refuses to go away. It is taking so many new forms. And we keep asking ourselves, how do we keep theatre going? How do we create and sustain pockets of community for parallel theatre and art in times of social distancing and lockdown and now in the future? Splendid efforts are being made all around us. We can draw inspiration from that and ideas from that, especially by young people, because they know, as we know, that when we write, direct, and perform theatre, when we watch theatre, when we participate in theatre, we are not alone. We are not lonely. Together, as a community, we assert not only our right to dissent and freedom, which is what theatre has been doing from ancient times. We not only assert our right to dissent and freedom, but also the community's well-being and the community's survival. Thank you. If there are any questions, I'll answer them. I was asked to leave 10 minutes, which I've done.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such an informative and important session. Now we will move forward with the questions.
Yes?
So there is one question: can we use Grotowski think in place?
Sorry?
Can we use only Grotowski think in play?
Only what thing Grotowski think in place?
Yeah.
Anything is fine, anything that works for you is fine. You can use Grotowski, Stanislavski, Bharata from ancient India, whoever, Aristotle from Greece. What works for you, what you relate to, what you're passionate about, what makes sense to you, that is what you have to use.
Okay, ma'am. That's it, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Next, we have a storytelling session by B. Balakrishnan. For more events, you can visit jairangam.org. Thank you.
Thank you.